It started in the rain. A powerful black CEO, barefoot and bleeding, whispering, "Please, don't hurt me." And out of the shadows, a quiet man appeared, a single father who didn't run from danger, but walked straight into it. He didn't save her for fame, or forgiveness. He saved her because he'd once failed to save someone before. What happened next would shatter everything she thought she knew about power, love, and what it really means to come home. Rain fell in heavy, uneven sheets over East Oakland, washing the streets in silver and shadow. The night was cold enough to sting the skin, and the narrow alley behind the Grand Marlowe Hotel smelled of asphalt, oil, and fear. A woman's breath broke through the storm, sharp, trembling, desperate. "Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk." Her voice cracked against the walls, swallowed by thunder. Naima Ellery, the CEO whose name once lit up magazine covers, was on the ground, one heel broken, her white suit soaked and streaked with grime. Her ankle bent at an unnatural angle, swelling fast. A laptop pressed tight against her chest, her only lifeline. Behind her, footsteps splashed through puddles, measured, confident, hunting. The man following her didn't need to speak. His silence was enough to tell her he wasn't done. "You should have just signed," he growled finally, his shadow stretching across her. The streetlight flickered, making his face flash in pieces, anger, arrogance, disbelief that she had dared to run. Naima tried to crawl backward, her palms scraping the concrete. Pain shot through her leg, blinding her for a moment. "Julian, please," she whispered, rain mixing with tears. He stepped closer. The headlights from a passing car cut through the alley, spilling light over her trembling figure. That was when another sound entered the night, a child's voice, soft and curious, drifting from the corner. "Daddy, is she crying like Mommy used to?" The words floated, innocent, cutting through the tension like a thread of mercy. The man froze for a beat, glancing over his shoulder. From the mouth of the alley stood a tall figure, broad-shouldered, rain glistening on his brown skin. He held a small girl wrapped in a faded yellow raincoat, her eyes wide, her curls plastered to her forehead. Kalen Brooks had been walking home from a late repair job, a bag of groceries in one hand, his daughter in the other. He'd planned to take the shortcut to avoid the storm. But then came that voice, the kind that made every instinct in him stop. For a second, he hesitated. He looked down at Amira, saw the question in her eyes. She wasn't afraid, just curious. Kalen crouched, setting her gently behind a stack of crates, out of the rain's reach. "Stay right here, baby," he said softly. "Close your eyes if it gets loud." She nodded, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her breath puffing small clouds in the cold air. Kalen straightened, his shoulders rolling back, his jaw tightening. The rain dripped from his chin as he stepped forward into the light. "Step away from her," he said, his voice low, calm, steady. The man turned, startled to see someone else there. "Mind your business," he snapped, taking a half-step toward Naima. But Kalen didn't move. His presence filled the space, silent but immovable. "Step away, before you do something you can't undo." The words were quiet, not a threat, not anger. Just truth. Something in his tone, the unshaken certainty, made the man hesitate. In the flickering light, Kalen's eyes didn't carry rage, only clarity. The kind that belonged to someone who had already faced worse storms and walked out alive. The silence stretched, broken only by the rain. Then, slowly, the man stepped back. One step. Then another. His confidence cracked, and within seconds, he was gone, swallowed by the dark. Naima's chest rose and fell in ragged breaths. She looked up, barely recognizing the man now kneeling beside her. His voice softened. "You're safe now." He extended his hand, waiting, not touching her until she nodded. When she did, he lifted her carefully, one arm under her shoulders, the other beneath her legs. The laptop never left her grasp. Amira peeked from behind the crates as her father emerged from the alley, carrying the stranger through the rain. "Is she going to be okay, Daddy?" she whispered. Kaylin gave a small nod. "Yeah, honey. She will be." Thunder rolled overhead, but the storm had already begun to fade. The streetlights reflected off the puddles like fragments of broken glass. In that fragile glow, Naima turned her head slightly, studying the man whose calm had saved her life. He didn't look back, didn't speak, didn't ask for thanks. He just carried her forward, his footsteps slow and sure, as if he had done this all his life, walking through the rain, finding the broken, and bringing them home. The rain followed them home, tapping against the windows of the small third-floor apartment like it refused to let go. Inside, the air smelled of detergent and damp fabric, the faint hum of an old radiator filling the silence. Kaylin Brooks pushed the door open with his shoulder, carrying Naima carefully through the threshold. The light inside was soft and amber, barely enough to chase the gray from their clothes. He set her down gently on the worn couch, his movements deliberate, almost rehearsed, like someone who had done this before. Naima winced as her swollen ankle brushed the cushion. The laptop was still pressed to her chest, her knuckles white from gripping it. Kaylin noticed, said nothing. He just reached for an old wool blanket draped over the chair and laid it across her shoulders. "You're safe now," he said quietly, the words more rhythm than reassurance. Amira hovered near the doorway, her raincoat dripping onto the floor. Her eyes flicked from her father to the stranger on the couch, then back again. "Daddy, is she gonna stay here?" she whispered. "For now," he replied, not looking up. "She's hurt." The girl nodded solemnly and tiptoed away, leaving small, wet footprints behind her. Kaylin crossed to the kitchen, his boots squeaking softly against the linoleum. The cabinets were old, paint peeling at the corners, but every dish was clean, every tool in its place. He filled a pot, set it on the stove, and dropped slices of ginger into the water. As the steam rose, the smell filled the room, sharp, earthy, healing. When he returned to the living room, Naima's breathing had steadied. Her eyes fluttered open, confused. "Where am I?" she asked. "My place," he said. "You fainted back there. Why did you help me?" Her voice cracked. He paused, glancing toward the rain-streaked window. "Because you needed it," he answered simply. No heroics. No weighty pause. Just the truth. He crouched beside her, examining her ankle. "This is gonna hurt a little," he murmured, wrapping it with careful hands. The movement revealed a long, pale scar down his forearm, a line of old pain. Naima noticed but didn't ask. She could see the care in every motion, the quiet precision of someone used to holding fragile things. The tea kettle whistled softly from the kitchen. Kaylin poured 2 mugs, the chipped ceramic warm against his hands. He offered one to her. "Ginger. Helps with the pain." She accepted it, her fingers brushing his. For a brief second, the contact felt like warmth finding its way back to her bones. As they sat there, the rain outside began to soften. The city's usual noise, sirens, engines, voices, faded into a low hum. But when a distant ambulance wailed, Kaylin froze. His eyes darkened, his shoulders tensed, just for a heartbeat. Then he looked away, forcing his breath steady again. "You're a doctor?" she asked gently. "No. Used to be a firefighter," he said, without turning. "Long time ago." He didn't elaborate. The scar spoke for him. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of things neither of them were ready to say. He rose and began hanging their wet clothes by the heater, the routine of survival written into each small motion: wipe the floor, check the kettle, fold the towel twice before laying it down. Naima watched him, realizing that every gesture carried weight. He wasn't saving her to be noble. He was doing what he trained himself never to fail at again. When he finished, he sank into the old armchair across from her, his face turned toward the window. The rainlight caught the side of his jaw, revealing a man both tired and disciplined. Amira's laughter drifted faintly from the other room, the sound like a candle in the dark. Naima looked at him again, softer this time. "You didn't even ask who I am," she said. "Doesn't matter tonight," he answered. "Names don't stop bleeding, or heal bones." She nodded slowly, staring into the cup in her hands. The ginger burned a little as she swallowed, but it felt good, real. Outside, the storm was dying, replaced by the quiet rhythm of water dripping from rooftops. Inside, for the first time in a long while, Naima wasn't running. Kalen didn't look at her again, but there was something in his stillness that spoke louder than words. He had carried her out of danger, yes, but he was also carrying something else, memories of a fire he couldn't forget, a child he couldn't save, a promise he'd made to never stand by and watch someone fall again. He didn't rescue her to be a hero. He did it because he couldn't bear the sound of another person calling for help and finding no one there. Naima woke to the sound of rain again, softer now, tapping against the cracked windowpane like it was reminding her she was still here. The room smelled faintly of ginger and detergent, the couch beneath her rough but warm. For a moment she didn't know where she was, only that the silence felt unfamiliar. No distant traffic, no hotel air conditioning humming in the background, no city hum of control and purpose, just quiet. Her eyes drifted to the corner of the room where her high heels sat side by side, their leather darkened from water. The right one had been torn at the sole when she fell. Now, she noticed, it had been patched. The stitching was rough but careful, steady, like someone had taken the time to make it walkable again. She stared at it, blinking slowly. Then the night before returned all at once. The alley. The man's shadow. The voice behind her. Julian. His words slammed back into her head, "If you walk out that door, you'll lose everything." The sentence had felt like a sentence. Not just a threat, but a declaration of ownership. Her breath hitched as the memory unfolded behind her eyes. The hotel suite had been immaculate, glass walls reflecting the skyline. She'd been standing by the window when Julian raised his voice, veins tight around his temples. He wanted her to sign. To hand over the shares. To seal a merger her father had pushed for years. "This is how we win," he'd said. "This is how we stay on top." But Naima had seen something hollow in his smile that night, something that didn't belong to love or partnership. "You don't mean we," she had said. "You mean you." When she refused, his tone changed. The charm cracked. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "If you walk out that door, you'll lose everything." She had walked anyway. Barefoot. The rain had hit her like judgment when she ran through the parking lot, laptop clutched to her chest like a child. She'd slipped once, twice, the concrete cold against her palms. The sound of her heartbeat had drowned out everything, the thunder, the traffic, the distant sirens. She didn't stop running until her ankle gave way, and then there was only pain. The image blurred in her mind now as she sat up on the couch, the patched shoes staring back at her like proof she hadn't dreamed any of it. Her leg throbbed under the bandage Kalen had wrapped. She could still feel the warmth of his hand supporting her shoulder when he said, "You're safe now." She didn't know why, but the memory made her throat tighten. She tried to stand, wincing, balancing on one good foot. The apartment was dim except for a low lamp near the hallway, casting amber shadows over the peeling wallpaper. Amira's laughter drifted faintly from another room, a sound small but alive. Naima found her purse on the counter, her phone still dead. The laptop was there too, its black casing slick with dried rain. Everything else, her power, her position, her control, was gone. She limped toward the door, fingers trembling as she touched the doorknob. She needed to leave. This wasn't her world. She didn't belong here among drying towels and grocery lists pinned to the fridge. But when she turned the handle, something stopped her. A small piece of paper was taped beside the frame. The handwriting was rough, almost shy. "Your foot's not better yet. You can stay." The words were simple. Not an invitation. Not an order. Just space, space she hadn't been given in years. Naima's breath shuddered as she stared at it. In the boardroom, every word she'd ever read was measured, negotiated, worth something. But these were free. She looked around the apartment again. The mended shoes. The folded blanket. The faint scent of ginger still hanging in the air. She thought of the hotel suite she had fled, its marble floors, its silence polished to perfection. This place was small, imperfect, but it felt alive. She let go of the doorknob slowly. Outside, the rain had eased into a whisper. Her reflection in the window was almost unrecognizable, hair undone, mascara faint, eyes no longer sharp but tired, real. She pressed her palm to the glass, feeling the cool seep into her skin. Power without peace means nothing, she whispered to no one. Then she turned away from the door, limped back toward the couch, and sank down. For the first time in a long time, Naima Ellery didn't feel like she was falling. She felt held, by the quiet, by the rain, by the kind of safety that had no price tag attached to it. Morning crept into the apartment like a quiet apology. The rain had stopped sometime before dawn, and now sunlight spilled through the thin curtains, soft and golden. Dust motes floated in the air, catching the light as if even they wanted to linger. Naima stirred on the couch, her ankle throbbing faintly beneath the bandage. The smell of ginger and something faintly sweet drifted from the kitchen. She opened her eyes to a room that was small, cracked in places, yet impossibly alive. The walls were covered in color, children's drawings taped in uneven lines, a collage of stick figures and rainbows, flowers, and smiling faces. Some were crumpled, others half-torn, but each one had a name written in a child's careful handwriting, Amira. Naima sat up slowly, her gaze wandering to the kitchen table cluttered with crayons, cereal boxes, and folded laundry. It was chaos, but it was warm. There was no perfection here, no polished marble or sterile symmetry like in her penthouse. Only life. Kaylin stood by the stove, wearing a gray t-shirt damp at the shoulders from washing dishes. Steam rose from a small pot, carrying the familiar scent of ginger. He didn't notice her awake at first. He moved with quiet efficiency, checking the kettle, wiping the counter, folding a towel. It was the rhythm of a man who'd built peace from routine. "Good morning," she said softly. He turned, just a glance, but his eyes softened. "You should be resting," he said. "You've got a long day of healing ahead." She almost smiled. "I'm not used to being told what to do." "Then take it as advice," he replied, pouring steaming tea into a mug. He walked over and placed it in her hands. "Drink slow. It helps with the pain." She took a sip, the warmth spreading down her throat, the spice stinging in the best way. "You always take care of strangers?" she asked. He thought about it before answering. "Not always. Just when they need it." He sat on the coffee table across from her, elbows on his knees. For a moment, the only sound was the kettle cooling. Then he said quietly, "Everyone deserves care, especially the ones who forgot how to receive it." The words sank into her chest, heavier than she expected. She blinked hard, trying not to cry. But something inside her cracked anyway. The tears came sudden, quiet, unstoppable. She turned her face away, ashamed. "Sorry," she whispered. "I don't even know why I'm crying." "You don't have to know," he said, rising. "Sometimes the body remembers before the mind does." He walked back to the kitchen, giving her space. The morning light touched the side of his face, and for a heartbeat, he looked almost like a photograph, strong, kind, but carrying a weight she couldn't name. Later, when the apartment fell silent again, Naima found herself standing by the window, looking out at the narrow street below. The world moved on outside, cars passing, people laughing, but in here, time slowed. She noticed how the sunlight hit the cracks on the wall, how someone had filled one with a child sticker shaped like a star. It made her laugh quietly, that small rebellion against decay. That night, long after Amira had gone to bed and the city had gone quiet, Naima sat awake on the couch. Her ankle hurt less now. She stared at the patched shoes sitting by the door, the stitches holding strong. Her laptop rested beside her, the glow of the screen dimming. She could leave. She could call for a car, find a hotel, vanish back into the world she knew. She stood, limping slightly, and reached for her coat. Her hand touched the doorknob. But then her eyes caught something, another small note taped near the frame, the same steady handwriting. Your foot's not better yet. You can stay. She froze. The simplicity of it undid her. No demand. No pity. No hidden motive. Just permission, to rest, to exist, to be cared for without having to earn it. Her throat tightened. She leaned against the door, breathing slowly. Then she let go of the handle and sank to the floor, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Somewhere in the other room, a child stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly. The sound filled the apartment with something Naima hadn't felt in years, safety. Morning came again, bright and forgiving. Naima awoke to the sound of tiny footsteps and laughter. Amira stood beside the couch, her hair a tumble of curls, holding a folded piece of paper pressed to her chest. This is for you, the little girl said proudly. Naima took it, unfolding it with careful hands. It was a drawing, 3 figures under a yellow sun. One tall man with brown skin, one small girl with bright shoes, and beside them, the outline of a woman left blank. Above it, written in uneven letters, family. Who's this? Naima asked softly, touching the empty shape. Amira grinned. I left the space empty for someone who'd stay. Maybe it's you. The words hit like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Naima's hand trembled as she traced the drawing. Why me? She asked, her voice catching. Because you look like someone who needs a family, Amira said matter-of-factly. Naima's breath shuddered, the tears she thought she'd run out of returning without warning. She pulled the little girl close, pressing the drawing to her heart. Kalen stood quietly in the doorway, watching. He didn't interrupt, didn't need to. His eyes met Naima's for a moment, steady, knowing. And in that silence, something passed between them. Not a promise, not even gratitude. Just understanding. For the first time in years, Naima Ellery didn't feel powerful, or broken, or lost. She felt seen. Outside, the sun climbed higher, filling every corner of the small apartment with light. And though the walls were cracked and the paint was peeling, it felt, somehow, like home. The morning light poured through the thin kitchen curtains, golden and forgiving, wrapping the little apartment in warmth. The smell of butter and sweet batter filled the air, mixing with laughter that sounded too bright for such a small space. Kalen stood by the stove, his sleeves rolled up, while Amira balanced on a chair beside him, stirring the bowl with exaggerated focus. Naima watched from the table, still in one of Kalen's flannel shirts, her ankle better but not yet strong. You said you wanted to help, Kalen teased. I did, she replied, raising an eyebrow, but you two look like you've got this under control. No excuses, Amira said, thrusting a wooden spoon toward her. Everyone stirs at least once. Daddy burns the first pancake every time. It's tradition. Naima laughed, limping over to join them. The sun caught her hair, still a little wild, and for the first time since Kalen had met her, she didn't look like a CEO or a survivor, just someone alive. She took the spoon, tried to stir, splashing batter over the counter. Oops. Amira gasped dramatically. You're worse than Daddy. That's impossible, Kalen said, flipping a pancake that landed half on the pan, half on the floor. See? Naima smirked. Told you. The laughter came easily then, loud, real, unguarded. For a few minutes, the world outside didn't exist. It was just the three of them, a man, a child, and a woman rediscovering what joy sounded like. The first pancake burned, the second one folded in on itself, the third actually looked edible. Amira beamed proudly. "This one's perfect." Naima slid it onto a plate, dusted her hands. "Perfect is overrated," she said. "It's not perfect, but it's ours." Kalen glanced at her, a quiet smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. There was something in her voice, a softness that hadn't been there before. They sat together at the tiny table, the stack of uneven pancakes between them. The plates didn't match, and the syrup was running low, but no one cared. Amira drizzled what was left across her plate, humming a tune as she did. "These are the best pancakes ever," she declared through a mouthful. "Even the burnt ones?" Naima asked. "Especially the burnt ones. They taste like laughter." Naima laughed again, a sound she hadn't recognized in herself for years. Kalen just watched her for a moment, not saying a word. The light from the window fell across her face, and he thought she looked like someone finally exhaling after a storm. Later that day, while Kalen fixed a leaky faucet and Amira colored on the floor, Naima sat by the window with a cup of tea. Outside, Oakland buzzed with weekend life, vendors setting up, kids playing ball, music from a passing car. But in this apartment, time seemed to slow. Her phone, long forgotten, sat on the counter. The screen was cracked but blinking, notifications from a world she had run from. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. That evening, they ate dinner together again, mac and cheese, store-bought salad, and laughter filling in the spaces between. Amira talked endlessly about school, about how her teacher wore socks with stars, how she almost won the spelling bee, how she told her friend that Naima might be my new mom. The sentence fell into the air, light as a feather but heavy in its meaning. Naima froze for half a second, her fork midway to her lips. Across the table, Kalen didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't correct. He simply smiled at Amira, reached over, and poured her more juice. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full, thick with unspoken things neither adult dared to name. Naima looked at Kalen, her heart thudding softly in her chest. He gave a faint nod, as if to say it's okay. When dinner was over, Amira dragged her crayons to the table again, drawing a garden with 3 stick figures under a bright orange sun. Naima watched her in the glow of the lamp, the sound of crayons scratching like a lullaby. She reached for her phone at last, intending only to check the time. The screen lit up, harsh and cold against the warmth of the room. Her eyes caught the subject line of an unread email, "Emergency board meeting, attendance required." Her breath stilled. The word sat there like a ghost. She could almost hear Julian's voice again, slick and dangerous, "If you walk out that door, you'll lose everything." She stared at the glowing screen until the letters blurred. Then she pressed her thumb on it, hesitated, and instead of opening, she locked the phone and set it face down on the counter. The sound it made, a soft click, echoed like a quiet refusal. Outside, a breeze stirred the curtains. Inside, Kalen hummed low while washing dishes, and Amira giggled at her drawing. Naima looked around the room, at the mismatched chairs, the peeling wallpaper, the uneven stack of plates, and she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Peace. The kind that doesn't come from control, but from surrender. Yet beneath that peace, a small tremor lingered, like thunder hiding behind clouds. Somewhere far away, her old life was waking up, demanding answers. The storm hadn't passed, it had only been waiting. And Naima, holding her cup of tea, knew it wouldn't be long before the rain found her again. The next morning began not with sunlight, but with noise, the kind that didn't belong to this street. Tires on wet pavement. Doors slamming. Voices raised. Kalen looked out the window first, his hands still wet from washing dishes. Parked along the curb were 3 black sedans, polished and heavy-looking, the kind that only carried people who thought they owned the world. Cameras followed. A woman in a sharp blazer stood in front of the building, flanked by a man with a tie too tight around his neck. They were pointing toward the stairs, toward this floor. Naima Ellery, the woman called out, her voice professional but loud enough to echo through the hallway. "We're here on behalf of the board." Naima froze where she stood, the dish she'd been drying slipping from her hand and landing softly on a towel. Kaylin's eyes met hers, calm but alert. "They found me," she whispered. "I thought I had more time." The doorbell rang once. Then again, harder. "Ms. Ellery, we just want to talk." She shook her head. "No, they don't." The voices outside multiplied, reporters now, their microphones pressing forward like weapons. Kaylin stepped closer to her, his tone low. "You don't have to open that door." "If I don't, they'll just keep coming," she said, her breathing unsteady. "They'll drag me out anyway." He studied her face, the mix of fear and something deeper, the same fire that had carried her through every boardroom and every storm. "Whatever you choose," he said quietly, "make sure it's for you, not them." The words landed like a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. She nodded, swallowed hard, and opened the door. The hallway burst to life. Flashes exploded, questions shouted over one another. "Ms. Ellery, where have you been? Are you resigning? Is it true there's evidence against Mr. Ward?" Her former fiancé, Julian, stepped forward through the chaos. He still looked immaculate, perfect suit, perfect smile, but his eyes flickered when he saw her limp. "Naima," he said softly, pretending kindness. "You don't need to make this messy. We can fix this. The board will reinstate you. Full pay, new PR team, the narrative is already being handled." She didn't move. "All you have to do is sign the new contract," he continued, lowering his voice. "And forget what's on that laptop." Her hand tightened around the strap of the bag slung over her shoulder. "And if I don't?" Julian's smile faltered. "Then you lose everything." She almost laughed. "I already did." Later that day, Naima stood in front of the mirror, her reflection caught between exhaustion and resolve. She'd borrowed one of Kaylin's pressed shirts, tucked neatly under a navy blazer she found in her suitcase. Her ankle still ached, but she could walk. "Just one step at a time," she whispered, remembering his voice. The boardroom was colder than she remembered. Polished glass walls, black chairs lined in symmetry, the city skyline stretching endlessly behind them. The same place where she'd once commanded the room with confidence now felt foreign, sterile. When she entered, the whispers began immediately. "She actually showed up. Is that a limp? I thought she was gone." Julian was already there at the head of the table, lounging in what used to be her chair. "Naima," he said smoothly. "I'm glad you came to your senses." She walked to the center of the room, each step deliberate, her cane tapping softly against the floor. "You always did underestimate me, Julian," she said. "Still do, apparently." He smiled thinly. "You're hurt, emotional. I don't blame you. But this isn't how power works. You can't walk back into this room and expect." "You're right," she interrupted. "I don't expect anything." Her voice was calm, even, but it filled the room. She set the laptop on the table, opened it, and tapped a key. The screens lining the walls came alive with files, spreadsheets, emails, recorded calls. Every secret she had carried through the rain now projected in sterile white light. Julian's smirk disappeared. "What is this?" he demanded. "Proof," she said. "Of what you've been doing. Of what I let you convince me to ignore." He tried to reach for the keyboard, but she stepped between him and the screen. "My steps may falter," she said, her eyes steady on his, "but I walk on my own terms now." The silence that followed was deafening. One of the shareholders gasped, another whispered something under her breath. Julian's face flushed, his mask cracking. "Do you have any idea what this will cost you?" "Everything," she said simply. And that's fine. She closed the laptop, tucked it under her arm, and turned toward the door. No security stopped her. No one dared. The sound of her limp echoed down the marble hallway, slower than before, but stronger somehow. Outside, the sky had turned gray, the city waiting for rain. Naima stepped into the open air, tilted her face toward the wind, and breathed. She wasn't sure if it was freedom or just the end of running, but it felt like both. Across the city, Kalen stood on his balcony with Amira, watching clouds gather. He didn't know what was happening downtown, but he didn't need to. He trusted her. And as the first drops began to fall again, Naima walked into the storm, not as the woman who lost everything, but as the one who finally decided what was worth keeping. The sun hung low over East Oakland, washing the small apartment in a soft gold that seemed to forgive everything. The rain from the previous day had given way to clear skies, and the balcony smelled of damp soil and new beginnings. Kalen crouched near the railing, his hands buried in a flower pot, guiding Amira's small fingers as she pressed a marigold into the earth. Gently, he said. Plants don't like to be rushed. Amira laughed, brushing dirt from her cheek. You always say that, Daddy. Because it's true, he replied. Everything good takes time. From the doorway, Naima watched them, sunlight tracing her face. The limp was still there, but lighter now, almost graceful. She stood for a moment, just watching, the easy rhythm of their laughter, the soft hum of life. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of interrupting something she didn't belong to. Do you have room for one more in this garden? She asked. Both turned at once. Kalen's face broke into a quiet smile, one of those rare smiles that didn't ask or assume, just welcomed. Always, he said. She crossed the small balcony and knelt beside them, her hands brushing the soil, the cool texture grounding her. Amira grinned and handed her a trowel. You can plant the next one, the girl said proudly. It's for the new start. A new start, Naima repeated softly. The three of them worked in silence for a while. The only sounds were the scrape of metal against soil, the occasional laughter, the whisper of the wind. The city stretched below them, distant and unbothered. Yet here, on this balcony barely big enough for three, an entire world seemed to bloom. When they were done, Amira clapped her hands, her curls bouncing in the golden light. Now they'll grow, she said, certain. Because they're planted with love. Naima smiled. You're wise beyond your years. I know, Amira said seriously, then giggled and ran inside to fetch her crayons. Kalen wiped his hands on a towel, leaning back against the railing. The sunset painted his skin in shades of bronze and amber. She's right, you know, he said. Love's good soil. Everything else just passes through. Naima looked at the line of flowers, uneven but radiant, each pot holding its own story. I used to think success was something you built with numbers and contracts, she said quietly. Turns out it's built with hands like these. He nodded, watching her, the faintest hint of pride in his eyes. What will you do now? He asked. She looked down at her dirt-covered fingers. Something that matters. In the weeks that followed, the world slowly learned what Naima Ellery had done. The boardroom scandal made headlines, but she didn't speak to cameras or sign with any networks. Instead, she disappeared again, this time with purpose. With Kalen's help, and Amira's approval, she rented an old building on the edge of town, its windows cracked and its walls faded from years of neglect. Together, they rebuilt it piece by piece. The Amira House. A home for women who had nowhere else to go. No press releases, no logos, just open doors and warm light. Some nights, Kalen fixed the wiring while Naima painted walls in soft colors. During the day, she met women who looked like she once had, strong but afraid, broken but still standing. There was no judgment, only tea, blankets, and the quiet assurance that safety didn't need to be earned. One afternoon, a woman arrived carrying a bruised arm and a small boy. Naima knelt, spoke softly, and helped her inside. Kaylin watched from across the room, seeing the same gentleness she once denied herself now offered freely to others. Healing, he thought, had finally taken root. The garden outside the Amira house grew quickly. Flowers, herbs, a small bench where Amira would sit and draw while the women talked. It wasn't perfect. Some days the roof leaked. Some nights the past came knocking in dreams. But the air there was full of something honest, something worth protecting. Months later, one quiet evening, Naima and Kaylin sat on the balcony of the apartment again. The city lights blinked below like scattered stars. Amira had fallen asleep inside, crayon still in her hand. Kaylin turned to Naima, reaching into his pocket. "I have something for you," he said. He pulled out a small bracelet woven from multicolored threads, uneven but made with care. Naima frowned, touched. "What's this?" "Amira made it," he said, smiling faintly. "She called it a commitment bracelet. Said it's not a wedding ring, just a promise." Naima took it gently, the threads rough against her skin. "A promise for what?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "To stay. To choose each other, even when it's hard," he said. The simplicity of it broke her. She slipped it onto her wrist, the colors catching the fading sunlight. Tears welled up before she could stop them. "Family isn't given, it's grown," she said softly. Kaylin nodded. "And we're still growing." They sat in silence for a while, the warmth between them needing no words. The air smelled of soil and rain returning. Inside, Amira stirred, half awake, and padded toward them, clutching a new drawing. She climbed into Naima's lap, showing it proudly. "Look," she said. "It's us in our forever garden." The picture was bright, full of colors, 3 figures surrounded by flowers, a house behind them, sunlight pouring down. In the corner, she'd written in shaky letters, "Love grows here." Naima laughed through her tears. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." "It's true," Amira replied confidently. Kaylin reached over and rested his hand on Naima's. "She's right," he said. The last of the daylight slipped away, replaced by the soft hum of evening. They sat together, the city a blur beneath them, the world outside still loud and restless, but here, in this little balcony garden, everything was quiet. Everything was whole. In the months that followed, the Amira house continued to bloom. Women came and went, each leaving behind a piece of their story, each planting something new in the garden out front. And every morning, Naima would step outside to water the flowers, the bracelet catching the sun, a small reminder that healing wasn't a finish line, it was a choice made over and over again. Sometimes family isn't the one you're born into. It's the one that finds you in the rain, teaches you how to stay, and grows roots beneath your feet until you finally call it home. If you enjoyed this story, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.